in this series, Authentic Christianity, and I've titled it, God Created. Did you say that with me? God created. May seem a little bit simple, but hear me out on this. It's well worth that we spend our time on this. And I'd like to begin today with my conclusion. So then if any of you want to check out, you already have my sermon, right? Almost every day when I go to the woods to pray, or when my wife and I go for a walk, we hear the rat-a-tat-tat in the woods. And if we'll follow that noise, we'll find there in the tree somewhere a woodpecker. Woodpeckers are industrious little birds, enthusiastic birds. They bore holes into trees, and then they stick their long tongue in there, and they suck out, or they actually, the sticky tongue grabs the insects, and they pull it back in and have a tasty little meal. And they become, for me, kind of a symbol or a reminder that there is a creator. And this is why. ProjectCreation.org says this: the woodpecker is an example of what is known as perfection of the organism. Such an organism is one in which several traits exist that are interdependent on each other and would be useless or even harmful if these traits were not fully developed from the beginning. So the idea that one day a typical robin decided that he wanted to get insects out of a tree and started pecking in that tree, and you know, that might not seem real far-fetched to you, but the robin wasn't equipped to do that. So a woodpecker is specially designed for the job that he has to do. A woodpecker has to have talons so he can hang tight to the tree. His beak has to be able to withstand 1,200 G's of impact. He's got to be able to hammer that tree at 1,000 times per minute. And those last two factors of hitting a tree at 1,000 times a minute, 1,200 G's, means that you have to have a built-in shock absorber behind that beak. Or else the first bird that tried to become a woodpecker would have killed himself. He would have beat his brains out trying to become a woodpecker. Evolution, somehow everybody just buys into the ludicrous idea that animals just decided they wanted to sprout wings, and so they sprouted wings. It took millions of years, but they sprouted wings. Well, meanwhile, what happened to the animals who tried to become that, you know? What about the fish who wanted to fly? When he jumped out on the land, he's going to die. So how did it work that he could just, how did that evolve? There's no in-between. You can't survive the in-between, if I put it that way. In addition, that woodpecker has to have a tongue so long that when it's back in him, it rolls up in the back of their head, some of them. So some birds, I don't know how many birds have tongues, but I haven't seen very many that have long tongues. So any bird that was trying to evolve into a woodpecker would die in the process. And if you follow that fittest survive logic, that every single animal that wanted to become some other kind of animal would have probably died in the process. And it really just doesn't make sense that a dog just decided he wanted to stand on his hind feet and become something other than a dog. So God left these little clues, all these little clues like the woodpecker. But only teachable, humble hearts will pick up on those clues. I don't mean to make you cynical, but if somebody is stubborn, if someone doesn't want to believe in a creator, there's no way you're going to talk them into it. They're going to find some reason not to believe in a creator. But if you will be willing and have a teachable heart, I promise you that when you get to know the Creator on a personal basis, you'll have a happier life than you've ever had before. If you'll take time to talk to Him, He'll give you clues along the way. If you'll follow the evidence, there is good evidence that there is a Creator and that He made everything. He'll tug on your heart. He'll show you world events and how world events are unfolding just like the Bible said. There'll be little clues. There'll be verses that when you read them in the Bible, they'll jump out at you. It just makes sense to you. But you have to be teachable. Genesis 1:1 is how the Bible starts. And it says in King James, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. The Message paraphrase says, first this, God created the heavens and the earth, all you see and all you don't see. We established in our first lessons of this series that we test everything, that Scripture is authentic, that God is one. And now I want to say, without a shadow of a doubt, that it is God that made everything you see and everything you don't see. He is the Creator. Now, I feel kind of like I'm trying to describe the ocean to a blind man by having him dip his fingers in some salt water or something. Today, there's so much evidence. This idea of creation is so vast, I can barely scratch the surface. So I'm going to be dumping a bunch of information on you, and all I'm trying to do is expose you to it, because most of you were not exposed to creation in the public schools. In fact, most of our world is made, if in the everyday movies out there, if there's a creationist, they're always the weirdo. They're the guy who's got guns in the back of his house or something like that. So the whole world has been programmed to say you're weird if you believe in a creator. But really scientifically, there's a whole lot more evidence, and it makes a whole lot more sense to believe in a creator than it does to believe in evolution. So I'm going to proclaim this, and I'm going to make a lot of people mad maybe, but I believe the Bible. So I'm going to teach the Bible today. Would you pray with me? God, I pray that you would allow the Word of God to have its effect. I pray that you would touch our lives here, God. You would touch the lives of those who watch. I pray that you would help them to see. If they have teachable hearts, if they're willing to learn, I pray you would teach them, you would give them these clues, and I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated. Now I'm going to begin with what the Bible says. I'm going to start there, and I'm going to show how the Bible can be defended using tangible evidence. But really, if we were never able to prove the Bible, then it would still be true. I'm saying the Bible's true whether I understand it or not. But I'm also saying that in this area of creation, a lot of it can be proven. But I want to just start with the Bible. I'm not going to comment on it. I'm just going to read from Psalm 104. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariots, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coveredest it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. He's talking about the flood there. They go up by the mountains. They go down by the valleys into the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. He sendeth the springs into the valleys which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. And wine maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon which he hath planted, where the birds make their nests. As for the stork, the first fir trees are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knoweth his going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey. They seek their meat from God. The sun riseth, they gather themselves together and lay down in their dens. Man goeth forth unto his work and to his labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are thy works! In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. So is this great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. These wait upon thee, that thou mayest give them their meat in due season. That thou givest them, they gather. Thou openest thine hand, they are filled with good. Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled. Thou takest away their breath, they die, and return to their dust. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, they are created. Thou renewest the face of the earth. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in his work. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. My meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more. Bless thou the Lord, O my soul. Praise ye the Lord. That's what the believer thinks. The believer looks at life, and everywhere he sees God. So why is this topic of creation such a big deal? Why, when I've written articles in the local paper, why did I get more mail on that topic than any other topic? Well, let me just turn that question around and ask this. If creationism is such a weird myth, if we Christians are weak-minded and we just made up creation, then why is the educational community, the entertainment community, and the political community so angry at us for believing that? Why don't they just feel sorry for us stupid idiots that don't know any better? Why does it bother? Why won't they leave that alone? Why will they let our public schools teach about anything and everything? They could teach yoga in public school, but not creation. Why is that? To me, that's proof in itself that there's something important there. If everything is against us, if it's really riles, if it really makes some people so mad, that's probably good evidence that there's something to that. Why would they propose such preposterous ideas? Let me just read to you from a book called Giants of the Animal World. It's written by Benjamin Bova. And I'm going to, excuse me just a minute, I'm going to turn this back down. Up, rather. Don't want to freeze you out. Listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but listen to how silly this really sounds. The earth was born about 5 billion years ago. Scientists are not certain of just how it happened, but they believe that life began about 2 billion years ago in the shallow waters of some unknown seacoast. A group of atoms came together, in a very certain way. They formed a new type of molecule, a giant molecule, much bigger than all the other atom groups nearby. And this large molecule could do something no other molecule could do. It was able to take simple atoms and smaller molecules from the sea and make a new giant molecule just like itself. Now, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you. That's science. Creation is an issue because to admit there is a creator is to admit that you have a boss. That's most people's problem with creation. Now, I've met a few people, and maybe some in this room feel this way. Some of us have this independent streak, right? I met a guy in Texas. He could hardly pay his bills, and he lived in a mobile home that was very small, on a lot that was not very nice. He didn't have very many expenses, and he couldn't pay his expenses. And he would go, we called them cedar choppers because they would cut down cedar trees in central central Texas. And not that it's wrong to do that, but he just didn't make very much money. And so one day I was talking to him, and he was telling me about he'd build houses, he could do this and that. And I said, well, why don't you go get a job and work for some house builder and make some good money? And he said, I don't want nobody telling me what to do. So instead of having a boss, he chose to not have two pennies to rub together. That kind of says it all for me. People don't want to believe in a creator because as soon as you say there was a creator, there's somebody that we're accountable to. Creation screams, there is a God and you need to pay attention to him. There is a God who did all of this, and he'll blow your mind, and mankind, even if we would give it to them that mankind has been around for millions of years, which I don't believe, really millions of years, and we can't cure the common cold, and we're so bright. It really takes more faith to be an evolutionist than it does to be a creationist. I'm just going to throw a bunch of things at you, and again, I'm not a scientist, but there's so much information on this out there on the web, but in Inspirations Bookstore, there's several videos and several books about this, but you just look at the odds of evolution being able to happen. You have about 200 bones in your body. The odds of being able to put all those bones just right in your body it would take 10 to the, if you could try a different arrangement of those 200 bones every second, it would take 10 to the 375th power of seconds. If all the earth was available, the chances of one single cell coming together, a cell coming together, is 10 to the 119,841st power. Those numbers are so big that if each of those numbers was a molecule, it would fill the universe. You notice what the evolutionary community does whenever they can't make a story fit, they just give it more time. So in my lifetime, the earth has aged by billions of years. Because no one's seen this happen, but we can theorize it would happen. But since we haven't seen it, it probably take thousands of years. And so before you know it, we just accept the fact that, that evolved. When we've never seen anything go from one species to another species, ever in the fossil record, ever in real life. No one's ever watched that happen. And yet we're supposed to believe that all these millions of animals and plants did that. I don't know why I would be considered the one weak-minded in that case. Evolution claims so many things that are not provable. Here's one that's actually very disprovable. Evolution claims that everything just kept getting bigger. You start with the little amoeba, and then after a while you've got a fish, and after a while you've got something on land, then you got the monkey, and then you got the man, and everything's getting more complicated, and everything is adding to, right? But look around you. Is that happening? Most of you are aware of the term entropy. That means everything is really breaking down in our world. Everything is eroding. Everything is falling apart. So, if all of the thousands of species would have been evolving over the years, there should be so many dead missing links out there, so many animals out there who are dead. There wouldn't be room on the earth if there's been billions of years of animals evolving. There's millions of years of mankind, there should be so many more bones on the earth than there are. But scientists are just able to say this, and we don't hold them accountable, so people go on believing that. Think about this with me. Scientists would have me believe that my car is ruining the atmosphere, causing global warming, and we're gonna crash the earth in 100 years. right? The same people that are telling me that everything's going to go extinct and everything's going to warm up and we're going to crash this thing have been telling me that for billions of years it's been getting better. So, which sky is falling here? I mean, if everything's getting better, then let it crash. Let the ionosphere collapse or whatever. It's just going to get better, right? So it's not even logical. If evolution works and everything gets better and better and better, then we shouldn't be crying, oh no, we're going extinct. Oh no, the earth is warming up. Oh no. Everything points to a designer. Again, I can't go, I'm going to be a little frustrated today because all I can do is drop little ideas. I'm going to throw out a dozen little topics that could be talked about for an hour apiece. But there are thousands of different species, and we're told by scientists that what happened was there was one species and it mutated to another species. But mutation means that there's some changes, little changes, and 99.9% of the time something mutates, it's bad. So if a human has a mutation, then there's something that's wrong or deformed or messed up with them, and usually they die. So the fact that mutations, which are usually bad, over billions of years finally made the amoeba become a monkey and a man, again, is not even a logic path. And even if natural selection really worked, which I think there's proof that it doesn't, natural selection only works in that the fittest do survive, but the fittest don't become, like the fittest foxes don't become bears. The fittest foxes just become the best foxes there are. Hughes said natural selection explains the survival of the fittest, but not the arrival of the fittest. So you can talk about how things changed a little bit, but where did it come from in the first place? The Bible says there's a creator. And the reason this is so important is because if I can finally believe that he is boss, then I have the security that there is a boss. This latest school shooting, as soon as it happened again, there was all this argument about gun control and all kinds of stuff. It doesn't really matter what you believe about that. I heard somebody say something that made sense the other day. They said, you know what? We need to start asking ourselves, what's happening to our young men that they would do this? Well, I'll tell you what's happening. They don't have a creator anymore. They don't have anybody to be accountable to anymore. Their life doesn't have meaning because you were just an amoeba that became something, and we don't even know if there's life after death. So if I can go on Facebook and become a hero for a little while and die, well, there's nothing after death anyway. So why not kill a dozen people on the way out? We have created monsters because we wouldn't teach them about a creator in our public schools or in our churches. And after a while, Christians stopped saying anything because we were considered so weird to believe in a creator. I'm standing up here today and saying there is a creator. He made everything that is, everything you can see and everything you can't see. And I'm coming against propaganda that's been coming at us for years and years. Many people would say, oh, there's scientists and then there's creationists. Or there's scientists and then there's people of faith. I'm here to say, for many, many years, and even today, there are many scientists who are people of faith. Look at those names. You recognize them? Francis Bacon, Robert Boyle, Louis Pasteur. These are great men of science over the years who made great discoveries. They're all creationists. They all believed that God made everything that was. And they were just discovering what God made. They were just exploring what God made. Dr. Etheridge, who was a paleontologist at the British Museum, he took care of the natural history part. He said this as he stood in his museum. 9/10 of the talk of evolutionists is sheer nonsense, not founded on observation and wholly unsupported by facts. This museum is full of proofs of the utter falsity of their views In all this museum, there is not a particle of evidence of the transmutation of species. That's a pretty clear scientist view that would not be allowed in some schools today. Or how about Dr. Wernher von Braun, who was a leading scientist in the United States space program? He said, one cannot be exposed to the law and order of the universe without concluding that there must be a design and purpose behind it all. The better we understand the intricacies of the universe and all it harbors, the more reason we have found to marvel at the inherent design upon which it's based. To be forced to believe only one conclusion, that everything in the universe happened by chance, would violate the very objectivity of science itself. What random process could produce the brains of a man or the system of the human eye? They, evolutionists, challenge science to prove the existence of God. But must we really light a candle to see the sun? They say they cannot visualize a designer. Well, can a physicist visualize an electron? What strange rationale makes some physicists accept the inconceivable electron as real while refusing to accept the reality of a designer on the ground that they cannot conceive him? It is in scientific honesty that I endorse the presentation of alternative theories for the origin of the universe, life, and man in the science classroom. It would be an error to overlook the possibility that the universe was planned rather than happening by chance. That's another scientist. I think most of you know this, but after being intimidated and propagandized for so long, a lot of people tend to think, well, us believers are just, we close our mind off to science. But that's not true at all. So I want to call on some witnesses. There are some witnesses I already mentioned. One of them is the woodpecker. The woodpecker is proof that you couldn't evolve into that. There's too many parts to that animal. You couldn't just evolve. In fact, how many of you right now are tired? How many of you are tired a lot? Why haven't you evolved something to solve that problem? How many of you are getting old and your joints are starting to ache and things like that? Well, if evolution's been so successful, why don't you just evolve better joints or it just doesn't happen in real life. And if it takes millions of years, well, who's going to live that long? It doesn't even make sense if it takes millions of years because each animal only lives, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So if animals live millions of years, maybe they could mutate to be something, but how do you get something done in 50 years? And we have never observed that in animals. I've never observed a man who sprouted gills because he wanted to swim under the ocean without any tanks. Never happened. But in evolution textbooks, that's what happens, right? We have fish that can get out on land and they sprout legs. We don't know how that happens. We have nothing in the fossil record that showed that happens, except there are some lizard-type things or whatever. But we have a lot of things in creation that shout there is a creator. For example, some of you may have seen pictures of the bombardier beetle. The bombardier beetle has two compartments in his body. One of them has hydrogen peroxide, and the other has hydroquinone, or quinone, I think. I don't know how to pronounce that. But what happens is, if he's being attacked by something, he will mix those two together and cause a bomb to be shot at his attackers. Now, how does the beetle, who doesn't have a bomb yet, evolve into that guy? The first couple beetles are going to blow themselves up trying to mix this thing together, or, how would a beetle decide to have two compartments in his? It doesn't. You look at that, and you're supposed to be in awe at the Creator and His ingenuity. There are sea slugs that will go eat animals with tentacles that sting, and then they'll use those tentacles to defend themselves. Now, who thought of that? Just one brainy sea slug one day thought, yeah, I think I'll go eat that guy and use his tentacles. No, that's how God created that animal to do. The giraffe has the highest blood pressure of any animal there is. And when he goes down, that long neck, since he has high blood pressure so that head can get blood when he's standing up, if he went down and didn't have some kind of protection, he would pass out. But in his veins, there's some kind of a check valve to keep that blood from rushing down to his head and making him pass out. Now, did the first few giraffes with long necks pass out? You know, there's decades of passed out giraffes saying, I think we ought to do something about this. Let's evolve some check valves. Or then there's this symbiosis that goes on. Like there's the garden ants that protect the acacia tree. There's a bullhorn acacia tree that if it doesn't have the ants there to do their thing, it'll die. So what happened when there was an acacia tree and no ants? Or an ant and nothing to eat on the acacia tree? There's so many things. The same scientists that will tell you, don't cut down that tree because there's a blind beetle, that if you take him out of the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem is going to fall down, right? Have you seen that? Big lawsuits about that. Same scientists who say, don't kill that one little beetle because everything will be messed up there, will tell you there was a time where there were no beetles and the world was fine. And then there was one beetle over here, and then another beetle, and then they turned into another beetle. And they don't have trouble with the past, with the ecosystem being all messed up. No food chain at all. But they want you to believe this, it's really our world today. They don't want you to put it all together. It's like, I tell you this, you believe that. I tell you this, I believe that. It doesn't matter that they wouldn't go together at all. Or take, for example, the moon dust. Some of you heard me tell this before, but when we went to the moon, when NASA went to the moon, they created a rover and their module that would land on like 11 inches of dust, because they calculated if the Earth was millions and millions of years old, knowing how much dust collects on the Earth now, that there'd probably be about 11 inches of dust on the moon. But when they got there, there was only about 5,000 years worth of dust on the moon. 5, 6, 10,000. That's what young Earth scientists believe, and it matches the creation story. But we don't want to believe that. We'd rather believe that beetles lived by themselves, and then I'm having a hard time not being mean. I'm trying to be real kind here because I don't know it all. But I'm just saying, don't you get tired of being called the idiot when really when you look at those theories, they don't make a lot of sense. Take erosion. It's another witness. At the present rate, we know how much things erode. At the present rate, if the Earth is 1 billion years old, there should be 30 times as much sediment in the oceans as there is. So scientifically, there's not enough sediment in the ocean for the Earth to be billions of years old. You take things like the Mississippi Delta. We can measure every year how much silt gets put in the Mississippi Delta. If you take the amount of silt that's already down there and you divide it by how much is put there every year, they estimate the delta to be about 5,000 years old. Or you take the Niagara Falls rim. We know how much it deteriorates every year. And if you see where it was and where it is, it looks like it's been running for about 5,000 years. Why is everything, more in line with the creation story, the young Earth story, than with the billions and billions and billions of years? Another thing you probably heard in 7th grade science classes, coal deposits. Coal was made by lots of vegetation, and they'll say for millions of years. But coal, actually, petroleum products have been made in just a few minutes when they were put under pressure, when vegetation was put under pressure. But the other thing that we found is in coal deposits that are supposedly millions or billions of years old, there have been human skulls or artifacts, chains of gold made by human beings. So if coal was millions of years old and mankind only came, Johnny come lately, how did he get in there? There's no answer to that from their point of view. So, again, I'm just throwing enough out there, and I'm not trying to be an expert. I'm just saying there's whole books back there to tell you about that. There is a creator. And I'm trying to help you not be intimidated to say, well, we're just dummies and we don't understand everything. The enemy has duped the world into believing there's no creator. Would you stand with me? Here's the bottom line. The scientific proof is there. But many people will just believe what they want to believe. Abraham believed in the Creator. Moses believed in the Creator. Jesus believed in the Creator and even said he made everything before Abraham was I am. John said that everything was made through him. So rather than being defensive today and rather than being argumentative with non-creationists, I really feel sorry for them. And I don't mean that in a prestigious or an elitist way. But they have been deceived, and it's going to cost them everything if they don't accept the truth. This is what Paul, the most prolific writer of the New Testament, said. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he's made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have been seeing the earth and the sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see that he has his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or give him thanks. And they began to think up foolish things of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they became utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So, God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. I'm not going to invite you to the altar today. I'm just going to invite you to stand in the presence of God. As he looks down today, I would that this was a bright spot. Everywhere else, people are refusing to believe in a creator. But here at Acts 2 Ministries, I wonder if he could just see everyone's hands in the air and everyone's hearts open. And everyone saying, we believe this thing, God.